Sephiroth was supposedly born around 25 to 30 years before the main events of Final Fantasy VII took place, but his birth was far from conventional. And to understand exactly why that is, we have to delve much further into the history of Gaia. Thousands of years before the main story even began, an extraterrestrial being called Jenova landed on Gaia via a meteorite and started to attack the inhabitants of the planet. At the time, the preeminent race on Gaia was a group of people known as the Cetra. They suffered huge losses to their population as Jenova hunted them down, but the remaining members of the Cetra managed to successfully launch a final stand, and they quarantined Jenova in the northern crater, where she lay dormant until Shinra started to excavate the northern crater approximately 30 years before the main timeline of Final Fantasy VII begins. Professor Gast named the remains they found as Jenova, but mistakenly believed them to be of Cetran origin. Nonetheless, Professor Gast started the Jenova project with the goal of using the genetic material they found to produce a Cetra in the present day. In this endeavour, he was assisted by Professor Hojo and Dr. Lucrezia Crescent, with Dr. Hollander also taking an interest in their research. The bulk of their research took place in the Shinra mansion above Nibelheim, and Vincent Valentine was assigned as a bodyguard to protect the researchers while they worked on the project. During this time, he fell in love with Lucrezia and actually proposed to her, but she rejected this proposal due to the guilt she felt relating to the death of Vincent's father, Grimoire Valentine. Seeking solace, Lucrezia then turned to Hojo, and the two soon became married. Now, in this time, experimentation on Jenova cells was starting to see results, but members of the team and the wider Shinra research departments started to look into more extreme measures, and various members decided to start experimenting on unborn children. Dr. Hollander was the first to take this approach, as he looked to surpass Professor Hojo and Professor Gast. This saw him create Project Jillian, or Project G as it would often be referred to as. Working with Gillian Hewley, the pair devised an experiment that would see her injected with Jenova cells. They would then impregnate her with the hope that her offspring would demonstrate enhanced abilities. The experiment was successful and resulted in the natural birth of Angele Hewley. For their next experiment, they decided to instead extract Gillian cells and inject them into a baby. This baby was known as Genesis Rhapsodus. After finding out what Dr. Hollander had been up to, Professor Hojo decided to be much more direct with his experimentation. Following their marriage, Lucrezia Crescent became pregnant with his child, and the pair, despite several objections from Vincent Valentine, offered their unborn child to Professor Gast for use with the Jenova project. This experiment would be known as Project S, or Project Sephiroth. Unlike Dr. Hollander's experiment, Hojo's would see Jenova cells injected directly into a woman's womb alongside a human fetus that was in the embryonic stage. He hoped that they would grow together and merge to create an enhanced human. Although initially complicit with this experiment, during the pregnancy Lucrezia suffered terrible pains frequently and also had visions of the future atrocities that her son Sephiroth would commit. Lucrezia warned Hojo about this, but he was unconcerned about such trivial matters due to the importance of the experiment. Later, upon the birth of Sephiroth, Lucrezia's pain was compounded. Wanting to continue their experimentation on the newborn baby straight away, scientists involved with Project S ripped the baby away from Lucrezia before she was even able to hold him. It started Lucrezia on a downward spiral, and with Vincent Valentine also dying in the time that followed, she became disconsolate and attempted to kill herself. However, due to the Jenova cells that were injected into her body, she was unable to do so. With suicide no longer an option, Lucrezia instead chose isolation and fled to the Crystal Cave. And when Vincent Valentine encountered Lucrezia toward the end of Final Fantasy VII, he informs her that Sephiroth is dead, to set her mind at rest. Now, during Sephiroth's childhood, scientists discovered that although he did exhibit enhanced physical and mental attributes, he was unable to talk to the planet, which was their ultimate goal. As a result, they decided to rear him as a soldier. They were also keen to ensure he didn't find out about his true origins, so they could manipulate him towards their cause. Therefore, instead of telling him who his real parents were, They instead told him the half-truth, that his mother was called Genova and that she died shortly after he was born. Sephiroth progressed through the military ranks at Shinra with ease and joined Soldier, their elite military division. By the time the Wutai War began, Sephiroth had already established himself as a soldier first class, and due to his exploits during the resulting war, he not only earned the respect of his peers, but also the nickname Silver Soldier. Due to his newfound fame, Shinra decided to use Sephiroth as a propaganda tool for their recruitment of people into their military operations. It's a decision that paid off, as they gained numerous new recruits such as Genesis Rhapsodus and Angeal Hewley, who both joined Soldier after being inspired by Sephiroth. Cloud Strife would also join Shinra's military forces with a dream of emulating his hero. During their time fighting in the Wutai War, Sephiroth became close friends with Angeal and Genesis, and even though they didn't know about their similar backgrounds, something of a friendly rivalry developed between the trio, although to Genesis it was much more than that, as he was extremely envious of Sephiroth's fame. This all came to a head during a virtual reality training session that got out of hand. Genesis challenged Sephiroth to a one-on-one duel, and Angeal was forced to step in and stop the fight. Genesis was wounded at the conclusion of this duel though, but despite insisting that it was only a minor injury, it didn't heal. Wanting to help his comrade, Sephiroth offered his blood for a transfusion, but was told that it didn't match. Soon after, Genesis disappeared, deserting from the military during a mission in the Wutai War, and was officially declared missing in action. Towards the end of the war, Sephiroth also met Ffvii, a soldier second class, who had been on a crucial mission with Angeal. However, soon after the conclusion of the mission, Angeal also went missing. Although he had become close to Angeal and Genesis, Sephiroth was somewhat unconcerned by their disappearances, and when they were announced to have been killed in action by Shinra a month after the conclusion of the Wutai War, he continued with his service as normal. However, Sephiroth had started to question his loyalty to Shinra, if only because he wanted to understand his purpose. Soon after the conclusion of the Wutai War, an anti-Shinra organization called Avalanche started to intensify its terrorist attacks. One of these attacks saw them take control of Junon's Mako cannon, and President Shinra mobilized Sephiroth to deal with this rebellion personally. During the mission, Sephiroth eliminated numerous members of Avalanche and ended up engaging with Ffvii, the leader of the organization. However, due to her being materia infused, their duel ended in a stalemate. And in the parley that happened afterwards, Ffvii questioned why Sephiroth actually fights for Shinra. It's something that sowed a seed in Sephiroth's mind, and 2 months later this line of thinking would be enhanced, as Genesis would invade Midgar with his new army of Genesis copies. During the time of his disappearance, Genesis had been working hard with Dr. Hollander and Soldier Director Lazar de Sericus to mount a force capable of invading Midgar and bringing the fight to Shinra. This saw the start of the Genesis War. Although Sephiroth undertook missions towards the beginning of this war, he started to question whether he was fighting for the right side. As a result, he started to decline missions that concerned either Genesis or Angeal. However, when Genesis started raiding Mako reactors in various locations around the planet, the war started to intensify further, and soon after, Sephiroth was sent on a mission with Ffvii to investigate a monster outbreak that was believed to be connected to Genesis. The mission would take place in Nibelheim, and before leaving, Sephiroth confided in Zack that it would likely be his last mission. He planned to retire from Shinra following its conclusion. On the mission itself, Sephiroth and Zack were accompanied by some Shinra infantrymen, one of whom was a young Cloud Strife. They were also guided to the Mount Nibel Mako reactor by young Tifa Lockhart. Upon entering the reactor, Sephiroth was disgusted to find pods inside that contained monsters created by Professor Hojo. He explained to Zack, who accompanied him into the Mako reactor, that average soldiers were humans who were infused with Mako energy. But when Zack then questioned how Sephiroth ended up becoming a super soldier, Sephiroth started to doubt his own birth and humanity, as he realised that he too must have been created in the same fashion as the monsters that had disgusted him earlier. Genesis then entered the reactor and confirmed Sephiroth's fears, that he was indeed a monster and that he was created by Professor Hojo through the Genova project. However, unlike himself and Angeal, who were considered failed experiments due to their degradation, Project Sephiroth was considered a success. Upon hearing this, Sephiroth locked himself away inside the Shinra mansion in Nibelheim, which was coincidentally the main research facility for the Jenova project. He read through documents left by Professor Gast and Professor Hojo and discovered that he was indeed a result of the Jenova project, which then led to the Nibelheim incident. Upon discovering the truth behind his origins, Sephiroth entered into a fit of rage and turned his sights on the nearest target, Nibelheim. During his attack, he killed many of its inhabitants, such as Tifa's father, and he set fire to the entire village. After doing so, Sephiroth headed to the Nibelheim reactor looking for the remains of Jenova. And inside, while Sephiroth was attempting to enter the inner chamber, a young Tifa Lockhart chased after him, trying to get revenge for her father. Sephiroth, though, thwarted her attacks and sent her flying down the stairs of the Mako reactor. Upon entering the inner chamber, Sephiroth ripped away the manufactured head and came face to face with his mother, Jenova. But he was soon confronted by Zack, who wanted to understand why Sephiroth had not only attacked the village, but also the inhabitants. Before they duelled, Zack proclaimed, "You're not the Sephiroth I once knew," to which Sephiroth replied, "I am the chosen one. I have been chosen to rule this planet." It signalled to Zack a complete shift in personality and demeanour, and the two squared off. Sephiroth though defeated Zack in the ensuing fight and went back to Jenova. Distracted though, he was stabbed in the back by that young Shinra infantryman, Cloud Strife. Thinking Sephiroth had perished, Cloud then left the scene to attend to Tifa, but Sephiroth broke through Jenova's glass casing and cut off her head. He then left the inner chamber carrying his blade and Jenova's decapitated head down the Mako reactor steps as Cloud watched, mortified. Zack urged Cloud to finish Sephiroth off, but instead, Sephiroth bested him and stabbed him through the centre of his chest. Much to Sephiroth's surprise, Cloud then used the last of his strength to shimmy down the blade, hoist Sephiroth into the air, and throw him into the depths of the Mako reactor. This action saw the theoretical death of Sephiroth, and indeed, later that month, Sephiroth was declared to be killed in action by Shinra. But Sephiroth was only somewhat dead at this point. The remains of his body drifted to the northern crater, where he absorbed knowledge from within the lifestream. And by utilising the power of Jenova's severed head and his own will, he started to create a new body. He also began to hatch a plan to become all-powerful. He would fatally wound the planet, allowing him to absorb the lifestream. 5 years later, at the start of Final Fantasy VII, Sephiroth called for a reunion. This would see all of the Sephiroth copies around the world head for the relocated remains of Jenova. Heeding the call, Jenova's remains, which had been relocated to the Shinra building following the Nibelheim incident, reanimated and took on the form of Sephiroth. And using this form, Jenova murdered President Shinra and escaped from the city. Jenova then infiltrated the Temple of the Ancients and manipulated Cloud into obtaining the black materia, which Sephiroth needed in order to cause Meteor, thus allowing him to inflict a fatal wound on the planet. Knowing of Sephiroth's plan, the group attempted to prevent Cloud from handing the black materia to Sephiroth. However, Jenova mimicked the appearance of party members and tricked them into giving it to Cloud, who then proceeded to hand the black materia straight to Sephiroth. Sephiroth then began to summon Meteor, which awakened the weapons, and in the ensuing chaos, Cloud fell into the lifestream. Between this time and the end of Final Fantasy VII, Sephiroth began modifying his body to become something befitting of a god, and as he did so, he waited for Meteor's arrival behind a protective shield that he had placed around the northern crater. However, when Shinra fired the Sister Ray and destroyed the barrier, Cloud and his allies were able to descend through the northern crater to the planet's core. Realizing what Aerith had done, Sephiroth had ventured to the planet's core to block the summoning of Holy. When he was then confronted by Cloud and his allies, he transformed into both Bizarro Sephiroth and Safer Sephiroth, but was still ultimately defeated. As a last-ditch attempt to try and succeed, Sephiroth attempted to take control of Cloud's mind, but Cloud's mental defenses were able to resist the attempt, and Sephiroth drifted away, being absorbed into the lifestream once again. This time though, he avoided complete dissolution by focusing on his extreme hatred for Cloud. Doing so allowed him to remain separate from the other spirits within it. With Sephiroth's active blocking no longer there, the combination of Holy and the livestream were able to stop Meteor, but Sephiroth's consciousness, which now resided in the livestream, hatched a new plot during this time. He wanted to taint the livestream so much that he would be able to control its will, and upon doing so, he believed that he could use the planet as a vessel to travel through space so that he could find another planet to rule, much as Jenova had done in the first place. During the ending of Final Fantasy VII, he actioned this plan. When the livestream emerged to assist Holy, it spread across the land, and Sephiroth used this to seed out his memories and Jenova's remaining consciousness. This action created a disease known as geostigma, which infected young children and individuals like Cloud with Jenova cells due to their weak resistances. At the same time, Sephiroth also attempted to create an avatar for himself, but due to his fragmented memories, he was unable to do so. He therefore searched the livestream for other memories and used them to craft 3 remnants who would search for Jenova and allow him to become reborn again. These remnants were Kadaj, Yazoo, and Loz, physical manifestations of Sephiroth's will. They managed to successfully recover the Jenova cells from Rufus Shinra, but in the aftermath, Loz, Yazoo, and Kadaj were all defeated. In desperation, Kadaj absorbed Jenova cells, allowing for the return of Sephiroth once again. He dueled against Cloud in the ruins of Midgar, but despite having numerous opportunities to kill Cloud, Sephiroth chose to elongate the fight as he wanted Cloud to suffer. However, Cloud became invigorated by memories of his friends and family and was able to defeat Sephiroth using Omnislash version 5. Before fading away, Sephiroth gave a foreshadowing warning claiming, "I will never be a memory," implying that he may still continue to exist within the livestream. But after this point, he no longer appeared in a direct sense in the story of Final Fantasy VII or its associated compilation.